In terms of my own research, when I went to Great Ormond Street in 1979, I decided to concentrate on non-Mendelian inheritance, monogenic but non-Mendelian, because it was quite clear that eventually we are going to get sorted with Mendelian disorders, with gene mapping. For example, as I have mentioned, we had the first link probe for haemophilia in 1984, and that was going to carry on clearly. So I concentrated on non-Mendelian inheritance. The first was Fragile X, which was very strange, the inheritance of it, and I was actually the first to propose a pre-mutation explaining the bizarre inheritance of Fragile X in 1985, and then very quickly after that we were trying to work out the inheritance of Angelman syndrome. This was a syndrome that had not really been recognised in the States. People weren't quite sure what it was, whereas at Great Ormond Street we were very clear with the neurophysiology and everything else of this as being a discrete syndrome with lack of speech and some learning difficulties and a jerky gait. But the inheritance was very odd. Paul Polani thought it was a chromosomal thing. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we worked out the inheritance of that, and it was due to a deletion on chromosome 15. But blow me, it was an identical deletion to the Prader-Willi syndrome. Completely different syndrome. Identical, down the microscope, chromosome deletion on chromosome 15. So we found this deletion on chromosome 15, but the problem was it was the identical deletion on chromosome 15 that we knew was the cause of Prader-Willi syndrome, an entirely different chromosome. And so we didn't know what to think of that. And this would be sort of 1989. Pat Jacobs was established as the cytogeneticist in Salisbury, and she had done a big survey of these minor deletions around in chromosome 15, and she said, "Oh no, we've got one of those. It's part of normal variation, the one that we thought was associated with Angelman syndrome, overlapped with Prader-Willi." She said, "Here, look at the survey," and indeed there was a survey, and she said, "Well, we've got one as extreme as the thing that you're talking about." We went and, unknown syndrome, we went and saw the child had Angelman syndrome, so that really clinched it. So then, how could you explain this? And very quickly, imprinting had been recognised in mice in 1985-86, these loci. And to cut a long story short, we soon worked out, together with the people working on Prader-Willi, that if the deletion was on the maternal chromosome, it would have Angelman syndrome. If the deletion was on the paternal chromosome, it would have Prader-Willi syndrome. So that discovery of imprinting involving Angelman syndrome, genomic imprinting, then we went into the diagnostics of it in the lab, the DNA lab, and found that a methylation signal was the thing that you could use for telling whether a person was affected with this condition or not. And that got me very much into epigenetics. And of course, that led on, I speculated in 96, or 1904 conference, but the publication was in 96, that perhaps imprinted genes might mediate transgenerational responses. By that I mean exposures to the environment, experience of the parent or the grandparent might actually change the setting of the imprinted genes and lead to consequences in subsequent generations.